Check out my new phone case.
Let me see. Hold on. Dude, what the?
Is that cool?
1 second. Fucking A. Pardon my French, but he says he's trying to get his phone to work for a hotspot. Rather than just telling me earlier today that he won't be able to do it, he's trying to see if his hotspot will work. Man, some of these people, seriously, it's no heads up. But yeah, your camera looks as clear as day. It's about as good as it gets.
No, like my phone case. Look at my phone case.
That's pretty hip. Is it
metal?
Wow. Just in case it gets like run over by a vehicle?
Yes. I don't.
Wow.
I anticipate you sit on it when we do the live debate. So.
Well, it could be.
Do you have like lapel mics for the live debate?
Yeah.
Which ones are you using?
The best ones.
I just got the Rode 2 wireless. They're freaking nice.
You serious?
Yeah.
Send me the link, bro.
Will do, bro. Bro. Rode.
This guy's honestly
wireless. I'm live, so before you say anything mean.
It would have, let's see. Let me check on something.
No, I don't want Messenger, stupid Messenger app. Right, let's see. James.
Are you live on YouTube?
Yes.
I don't want you to get a copyright strike for this music, Tommy.
I don't care. I just.
Or do I?
Like, it gives you the option to like remove section of audio or whatever, so it's fine. I don't care.
Amazing.
There you go. I sent you the Google search. Why did I send you the Google search? There you go. I sent you the Amazon link. So it's got two microphones and one receiver. The distance is supposed to be like 200 yards, but I think the tested range is like 150 yards, which is more than enough. And each one has a microphone slot, which you can plug into to do two separate splitter things. I use splitters for ASMR stuff.
That's hot. I like that. Can you send me the link for real?
I did. I put it in Facebook.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. Because yeah, I don't really know a lot about that stuff. Are the wires long?
Doesn't come with wires. You got to get your own wires, but it's wireless, James. There's no wires.
Huh. Do you know how many you can have like running at a time?
How many you can have? Like, comes with two mics, and each mic you can plug in a splitter, so you can get it 4. That I have on my system is 4 mics, and it records on 2 channels.
That's super hot, man.
Oh yeah, because you want to do the what are they called? The panels. So panels, I don't know how that would work for panels. I know for 2-person things, it's great.
That's amazing. Isn't that amazing?
Yes, my chat says it's amazing as we wait.
I'm triggered.
Don Fullman says amazing. James is way lower in volume, says the Church of Entropy. Do they know they're live? Nope. Sully, we do not know we are live. Not legit.
Amazing.
James is looking sexy, says Don Fullman.
Thank you. I'll take what I can get.
King Sloth says he doesn't like the case because he's a beta.
Oh, I like it all right.
So did you get word? Is it working? Is his hotspot working?
I'm not optimistic about this.
Ah,
I don't know why he didn't just tell me that his internet has been apparently out since Friday, in which case we could just find a new date. This is 2 days in a row that people are doing this kind of stuff of like, oh, I can't make it after all. It's like, it's hard to believe, like, oh, it's just so
yeah, I got a few of those on my end too. I think I had 2 or 3 reschedules last week. James is a communist. Ha 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 ha.
Kazakh in my chat says, I've seen T-Jump lose it on Ask Yourself's server, I think. Right, you are, Kazakh.
Lose it. I owned Ask Yourself.
Mortal enemy, Ask Yourself, Isaac.
I owned him multiple times to Sunday.
He told me, he said, I own T-Jump. He said, I will rule you.
I don't think Ask Yourself can use that many syllables.
I'm enjoying my Mr. Goodbar.
Is that like a protein thing?
No, just candy.
I am fat. I've been gaining so much weight.
Yeah, I gained some weight recently too.
Yeah.
A lot of ice cream.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit like,
Revelations is like, let me join. I'm a commie. I don't actually know if he is or not. Psh, we can find a commie for you, says Sully. Get vouched. It's called Vouch. We need an impromptu debate now on communism.
yeah, a little bit surprised that someone would do this, but
Can't he just use his phone? Like he has a phone. Like if he can message you, he should be able to like use his phone, unless he has like a limited number of minutes or something. Don says you're buff.
thank you, Don. Thank you.
He has commie internet.
Oh boy.
Haas hasn't. Is Haas like his name?
Yeah.
Haas hasn't had internet in 24 hours. Unlikely the problem will resolve itself in the next 10 minutes. I do hope you all are able to reschedule, says Coalescence. Sully says he's dodging the attack using the capitalist internet. I think he has commie internet. He doesn't. If he had capitalist internet, it'd work like mine and James. Mine and James are strictly capitalist internets. We don't adhere to that commie internet stuff. Oof is right, Snake. Oof duh. You gotta add like the oof duh. hasn't had internet, go to Starbucks. Oh wait, it's capitalist. Ha 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 ha. Pull a James, go to an IHOP.
That's true. I was at a Perkins when I debated.
Perkins.
Should have seen the look that Steve McRae gave me, because they could hear like dishes clanging around in the background and stuff. He was like, "Are you at a restaurant?"
Oh, that was like really. That's like a really really old one.
Yep. Kyle's been tweeting from the Non Sequitur Show account.
Oh yeah, wasn't he in jail? I thought he got arrested.
That I don't know.
Public library has commie internet. You and James should just debate a random topic. James still a theist, I forgot, question mark. I would think so. Believe he believes in what's his name? Jesse Lee Peterson is the true God. Amazing. I don't know if Tom or James is sexier. The chair. Joe Vertica. Got him. Got him. Debate James on punctuality. Send 17 Bitcoin to Mother Russia and ransom the internet will stop. Yeah, not looking hopeful. 12 minutes late. Great job, James wins. Super chat from Don Fullman. James, you doing anything for Christmas?
He responded, but just let me we had somebody yesterday who like a half hour before the debate, maybe an hour, was like, "Oh, I can't make it. I'm stuck somewhere." I was like, "You're like stuck like in like a bog? Like what happened?" Like And this kind of stuff is like, yeah, it's like, it's fine if we're never entitled to any speaker. We're thankful to have people on. It's fun. But like, if you say you're going to do something and then you're like, oh, actually, and it's like, if you know your internet doesn't work for the last 3 days, you might want to, but he said it was supposed to be fixed by now. Like, but even then, I would say if you think that, oh, it's supposed to be fixed by this pretty much the same time I'm supposed to go on the stream,
Give somebody
you might
heads up.
want to say, hey, I don't know if they'll for sure fix it by this time, because I mean, internet companies, in my experience, are notoriously unreliable. You just say, hey, I don't know if I can make it. Maybe we should rain check. Instead, everybody's waiting here for probably a half hour before he'll call it. And then it'll just be like, nope, guess it's not happening tonight, which is just like, I mean, what would you think about someone whose reasoning was that?
Darth Dawkins? Yes, it's very unprofessional. But he is a commie, so I can't blame him.
I don't know if I've ever seen this type of reasoning used before.
What type of reasoning?
Infrareds.
What is his reasoning?
Just the idea of like, oh, I'll just, my internet hasn't been working for 3 days. I'll still say yes, even though I don't know for sure if it'll be fixed by then.
Yep.
That, and I'm like, the fact that he's trying to get a hotspot to work makes me think that he wants to stream like normally. If I were in his shoes, I would just do the debate via Zoom, not worry on my phone, and not worry about it basically having to be like on my own stream, and you can just upload it later. But
Well, you
I
can
don't
stream
know if
from your
it's,
phone. Like I found that out recently. There, Streamlabs has a phone app.
well, he apparently doesn't know about that. So
I've been messing with that because you know that the new chat server, the new chat app online that's really getting really popular, Chatterbox, I think is what it's called. That's where Darth Dawkins is gone to because he's been banned from everything else. So I've been trying to learn how to get that to work as a source of content.
it's pretty hot, Tom. I'll give you that.
I think he's sort of here. Clubhouse, Sully, Clubhouse. That is correct. It's not. Clubhouse is what it's called.
Infrared, we're pumped to have you.
Yeah, I gotta send this. I gotta let my Discord know like where to go and stuff because I can't stream this myself. So I'm not gonna be able to. I'm just on my phone right now. My internet's completely down. I'm using my mobile data or whatever. So I guess that's how we're gonna have to proceed.
You got it. Well, I sincerely appreciate you being here, Infrared. I was pissed, but the fact that you The fact I'm just being honest. The fact that you like worked through it and you're still here, I honestly, I am grateful. So I seriously do appreciate it, because I know that that's got to be frustrating, especially with me hounding you over email. So I am sorry about that, man. I got to be honest. It's yesterday. It was, I had somebody cancel on me like 60 minutes before, and the other person, the other debater, found out at the same time, and I was, so anyway, I appreciate that you have come, even though it's been a total challenge. Seriously, appreciate it, man.
No problem.
And introducing you to your brother, Tom Jump. I think you guys are going to get along so well. I really do. I appreciate both of you guys, seriously. And I got to tell you, I think people are pumped to see this because both of you guys are strong debaters. You guys are no soy boys. It's true. And so I think it's going to be fun. And let's see here.
Don't assume my soy gender.
What's that, Tom?
Do not assume my soy gender.
But it's going to be so based and red pilled, as Tom likes to say. And I've got it pretty much set up here. So I can wait for you, though. Like, no rush, Infrared. Seriously, I just appreciate you made it. And if you need to like contact your people through Discord just to like direct everybody, that is totally okay. We don't have to start now.
I'm live already. Yeah, just you know.
Right now.
Sorry, Infrared. Tom was he always has to have the attention. What did you say? I'm so sorry, Infrared. I know it's been a long day, man.
It's all right.
I owe you. And in the meantime, Infrared, unless I'm distracting you, I can give you a chance to do whatever you're up to in terms of directing people on Discord where they can find the stream. I was going to mention, we would be pumped to have you at the conference. Do you know if you might be available?
Yeah. I mean, you guys getting the tickets or whatever, plane tickets?
Yes, 100%. So we'll cover the tickets. We'll cover.
Yeah. I'll be able to go. Yeah.
Based and red pilled. Your brother Destiny said he would be. I think I already mentioned he would be up for a debate on whether or not Biden has done well so far. And then T-Jump, I'm sorry, man. I'm so behind. I've got to ask Destiny about your potential debate on whether or not there's objective moral values. I'll ask him that. And it's just been, man, I've been frankly getting my butt kicked this last week or two. So, but yeah, so you guys obviously, I don't know if you figured it out. You're both invited. It'll be an epic time. And, but yeah, so pretty cool.
All right, I'm gonna drink. I'll be back in a minute.
You got it. Yeah, I'm so sorry, Infrared. I was just so triggered, and unfairly so, because I've been in your shoes before.
Yeah. So I haven't been able to stream all weekend, you know, and it's like I don't know. I guess I don't know what to do. So I'm ready whenever, you know.
Oh, okay, you got it. And once Tom's back, we'll jump into it. And oh yeah, plus I was hounding you on Twitter. I'm so sorry. It's like I've just been under a lot of stress. I'm sorry. I blame Tom. I do. I think once he's back, we'll be ready to rock and roll pretty soon here. Cool. We're streaming just to be sure that it's smooth. And then Tom, can I just quick check that your audio is okay?
Testing, 1, 2, 3, 4. Testing, 1, 2, 3, 4.
And then infrared?
Yeah, hello.
Gotcha. Tom, yours is a little bit low as always, but if you're okay with it, I'm okay with it.
That's fine.
So, all right. So the stream looks like it's smooth so far. Let me just give it like another 8 seconds just to be sure. And then if you can remind me who's going first.
Doesn't make a difference to me. Yes, Brenda, this is live.
I want the T-Jump to go first because I'm not sure what exactly the debate's gonna be. You know, like where he's coming from and stuff.
Sure. Fine by me.
You got it. And it looks like, oh. But yeah, thanks for being here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, everybody, today we're debating capitalism versus communism, and we're starting right now. And then I'm going to kick it right over to you, Tom. Cool?
Yep.
Okay. Thanks for your patience, guys. Seriously. Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Hey, everybody. Tonight we're debating capitalism versus communism, and we are starting right now with T-Jump's opening statement in defense of capitalism. T-Jump, the floor is all yours.
Yeah, so communism is shit. My opponent and all communist debaters face an impossible task in a debate because economic and political systems are kind of like technologies. If one works better, you don't need to debate it. You don't need papers. You don't need cherry-picked examples of successful companies. If it works, you can just start a company and make millions in proving it's successful and inspire others to follow in your footsteps. If it works for most people, it will take over because it's more successful. Someone debating economic systems is like whoever looking at a Boeing 747 and someone saying, I can do it better. Well, I mean, okay, then if you can do it better, stop spending your time debating and go do it. But for some reason, no communist or socialist debaters are going to go out and start companies based on their ideas. I wonder why that is. Is it because it's hard? Because most fail? If communism and socialism are so great, then go out and start socialist and communist companies and communities. And show that they are successful and inspire people to make more until it grows to be a serious competitor to capitalist economies. This is the only way for communists and socialists or any economic debate to be won. Go out and do it and make enough success to compete with the current biggest leader. In my camp on the capitalist side, I have hundreds of thousands of successful capitalist businesses supporting billions of people, improving everyone's quality of life more than any other system ever in human history. The communist socialist, and I'm adding those two together, they are different things, but I'm going to give them as best evidence I possibly can by adding them together. And if you do, you have a few thousand or so successful communist businesses, socialist communist businesses. And to be fair, many of them are more successful than some capitalist companies. But even so, like every blind squirrel can find a nut once in a while. Any system can cherry pick a few successful examples in that system, but that's not evidence it's a better system. To have evidence of a better system, you need to show that on average, any random person can choose to go with your system and have a higher rate of success than the other systems. In order to do that, you need to go out and start your own companies or societies or communities and show that the success rate of this kind of system is higher than the success rate of the competing system. That's why in my worldview, I believe my knowledge of economics gives me the ability to start a company. And so I'm starting an atheist church with the goal of lowering the cost of living as much as possible by buying apartment buildings and lowering rent, because I believe my economic system can work and can make a profit. But we don't see this in the communist socialist camp. They just like talking about it. So if they really think that their system can work, go out, do it. Make a system that works. Again, cherry-picked examples of some successful companies or papers do nothing. The proof is in the proverbial pudding. We can have lots and lots of examples of papers of successful capitalist countries, but we don't really need them because we can just look around us. The positive effect of capitalism can be seen in essentially every country in the world. It has increased the quality of life for everyone throughout every society, pretty much, with a few exceptions of the Aborigines who don't have any technology. And it's done this consistently. It is the most successful system that we have in human history. But the reason we can't expect any communists or socialists to actually start their own companies is because there is a fundamental issue with communism, socialism, which is the lack of the most important resource for any economy, confidence. Confidence is the ability to get the majority of the populace to trust in a system and play the economic games. Most laws and economic policies have little to no direct impact. What they accomplish is indirect in that they cause people to act differently through the law, which was never going to be able to force them to. The presence of the law encourages people to choose to act differently without it realistically being able to be enforced. As an example, you can think of like tax evasion. Some people think that most tax evasion, you need like some offshore account and that only rich people can take advantage of it. But in reality, anyone can evade taxes. A lot of cash transactions can't be traced by the government. So most people can just not report any cash-based funds and evade taxes pretty easily, which is why you were required to do your own taxes, because most people report more and pay more in taxes than the government knows about. So if they just calculated it for you and sent you a bill, they would make less money. So the honest people end up paying more because they actually report their money. And it's quite an unfair system. But in reality, the IRS can't really do much about it. Even if they had adequate funding, which they don't, they would never be able to actually account for most people's tax evasion, and they'd only be able to catch the minority of people who are committing the crime. Most political and economic systems are like this. It's mostly smoke and mirrors to encourage people to act in a way which is beneficial without actually having the ability to enforce the policies directly, much like running a red light. How many people who run red lights are actually ticketed? Like 0.001%. How many times do you think you could run a red light without being caught? Probably a lot. You probably have. But the presence of stoplights, the law, and the minority of people who are ticketed for breaking it encourages enough people to obey the law to create a safe and stable driving experience for the majority of people. Most political and economic policies are like this: smoke and mirrors. Why do we have money? Confidence that someone can take your cash and trade it for an equal thing. Why is religion so popular? Because it provides people with confidence. Why does advertising, which is just pretty and has absolutely nothing to do with the product, work so well? Confidence. Why do politicians who are completely useless idiots and will do nothing get the majority of votes? They inspire confidence. The fundamental problem with communism is that it doesn't create or provide this confidence nearly as much as capitalism. For example, imagine a communist poker game where you leave the game with as much money as you entered. How many people are going to play this game? Nobody. Imagine a communist lottery where if everyone buys a ticket, they win $1 back. So they buy a ticket for $1, get $1 back. How many people would play the lottery? Nobody. The reason people play the lottery and poker is because they want to win big and take everyone else's money. That's why poker and lotteries are billion-dollar industries. Of course, there are extreme examples of communists that don't usually advocate for like 100% equity in everything. So these are extreme examples. But this kind of confidence that results, this is the kind of confidence or the lack of confidence that results from communists, like playing a poker game where you walk away with exactly as much as you walked in. This is why people prefer companies that are capitalist, because you have a chance to win big. People are inspired by these win big opportunities, and the ones with the biggest possible wins are the ones that get the most traffic, even though they have the lowest win rate. Like the lottery, that's the Super Powerball with the $22 million win rate or prize gets a lot more tickets sold than the one that's like $100 or $1 million. This is confidence. Confidence is the fact that people are stupid by design from evolution. We have thousands of fallacies, biases, misconceptions, illusions, delusions, and each of these drive the way we think and how we make decisions. Religion, lotteries, capitalism. People will happily follow stupid ideas and completely reject objectively better rational decisions en masse. In order to make successful political or economic systems, you need to accommodate these stupid biases ingrained in human form from evolution, and socialism and communism don't do that. For example, imagine every casino was a communist casino in the world, and one day somebody decided to build one capitalist casino. What's going to happen? Everyone is going to start flooding into the capitalist casino and losing all of their money with a few big winners. And those few big winners will act as inspirational stories for everyone else, causing people to be motivated to go to that casino because they feel like that could be me. At the same time, the casino is going to start making mad profits and be able to pay their employees better wages than the communist casinos. And then the second place, third place, fourth place prizes are going to begin to increase because you have excess money, until even a minor win at the capitalist casino is going to put you ahead of the major winners at the communist casinos. And this capitalist casino is going to continue to grow at an exponential rate until there are more winners in that than all other communist casinos combined. Now, There will also be a significant more losers in the capitalist casino because it's not a fair system, but the employees will be paid more. Everyone has a higher standard of living, and there is an evolutionary reason for why this is the case. In order to innovate and grow, you need to fail many, many times in order to discover the new successful thing. Most things end up failing, like Thomas Edison's 2,000 ways to not make a light bulb, and he needed one way for it to work. This is the evolutionary purpose of men and why they have such a larger spectrum of intelligence of more smart and more stupid people, because the evolutionary design to be expendable and try a bunch of random crap, which mostly kills them. But then there is that one lucky guy who gets some huge discovery pushing humanity forward. This was the most successful evolutionary pattern throughout human history, which caused us to have this ingrained fallacy of go for the big win, even if the chances are stupid low, because it was so successful evolutionarily. The golden idol of world capitalism is a statue of liberty that inspires and draws people in, even if they are more likely to fail, which consequently builds the economy, innovation, and growth which communism can't compete with. Because capitalism plays to our basic human desires and instincts, which inspires confidence, this is why communism is doomed to fail. When given the option between going for the big win or a mediocre life, people are going to go for the big win. And because of this, more money and more resources will go to the capitalist government, allowing it to provide better jobs, better standard of living, more innovation, more technology, and everything people want in a society. Is capitalism immoral? Yes, but it works and produces better standards of living. You just look at the amenities of poor households today. This was from 2005. 92% have a microwave, 81% have an air conditioning, 75% have a car, 70% have a VCR, 64% have a DVD player. You can just go on and on and on. The standard of living today, due to capitalism, has been significantly increased, even though it is unfair and immoral and inequity between the amount of money people have. The standard of life today is significantly better thanks to capitalism. So the question is would you rather be in a society with slavery, where most of the slaves have TVs and air conditioners, or would you rather be in a society where everyone is equally starving? I choose the TV and the compulsory employment. I will conclude there.
You got it. Thank you very much, Tom Jump, for that opening statement. And want to let you know, folks, if it's your first time here at Modern Day Debate, we are a neutral platform hosting debates on science, religion, and politics. And we hope you feel welcome no matter what walk of life you're from. Thrilled to have you here. And with that, we're going to kick it over to Infrared, who, by the way, I want to give serious credit to. We are so thankful Infrared pushed through it. He got everything to work. And so we really do appreciate that, Infrared, that you were here tonight, even though you pushed through it, and the floor is all yours.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I agree to an extent that any debate as to the question of communism is already off the bat going to be misleading. There can't really be a debate about communism, but that's not because some obligation is imposed upon communists to go and prove it instead of debating it. Rather, to even debate this question of communism, one has already conceded the terms to the communists that there is a common social sphere in which we expect the minimum of adequately providing for people's standard of living, attending to their needs, attending to their wants. In other words, treating it as a system that can be swapped out for other systems in order to fulfill more or less the same goal, which is to lead to more or less the common prosperity of a given people. So when one treats communism as if it's just a system that can be swapped out with another system called capitalism and another system, this very way of politicizing the economy toward the fulfillment of common and social ends is already, in a sense, inevitably going to be a communist paradigm. We have to remember that capitalism did not arise as a system to fulfill a specific type of ends, but as a kind of spontaneous amalgamation of different enterprises who are pursuing the very selfish ends of just acquiring profit. And by selfish, I don't mean in the sense of the fulfillment of individual interests. I mean selfish in the sense of the mere propagation of money for money's own sake. Through past the 19th century, this specific type of economic order, if you can even call it that, I would call it an economic disorder, fundamentally collapsed in the 1929 stock market crash. And afterwards, capitalism has been maintained and it's been on its lifeline because the government has treated the economy as a facet of politics. And politics, we should remember, doesn't just involve governing people and ruling over people by force, but also ensuring that the material premises of being able to govern are attended to. In this case, the economy. After the stock market, after the global collapse of capitalism in 1929, various capitalist governments, which were under the control of the ruling financial and industrial oligarchies, found it necessary to fix the economy, satisfy the population, or risk being overthrown in a violent revolution. So already, socialism, in a sense, has already prevailed and won as the dominant mode of production at the most essential and fundamental level. Our political superstructure and our ideology has not awakened to this fact, but what has driven our economy since then is not some kind of spontaneous amalgamation of competitive markets and different enterprises that are arising spontaneously and organically, but a heavy-handed form of state intervention in the economy, together with corporations, which are fundamentally have become an arm of some kind of central state planning, in order to ensure that the economy can maintain its vitality and can survive. Now, this view of communism as merely a system and different form of social organization at the level of the factory floor, or even at the level of a mere community, as compared to so-called capitalism, is very convenient for people who want to create vacuums with which we can test theories and systems, right? But we have to take into account that our very subjective positedness before these kinds of vacuums can't be taken for granted. The very idea of being this social engineer elevated over all of social reality and economic reality with which we can just experimentally play and insert and remove specific types of systems within vacuum sealed contexts. This very type of subject is part of a community and is part of themselves, part of a society. Hence, why Marx and Engels would insist that the utopian forms of experimentation, which would fulfill the standard of success or failure offered by my opponent, they critique these utopian communities not because they weren't successful. Actually, it's interesting because in the Americas, the utopian socialist communities were so successful that they did, spread like spread like mushrooms. They were emulated and replicated because they proved to be so successful, even in competing on the capitalist market. But Marx and Engels critiqued them because they did not actually address the economy at the most fundamental level of our common sociality, which is mediated through the state. The means of production can't be isolated in some kind of vacuum. The means of production are the fundamental means by which a given society reproduces its existence. And in the age of capitalism, this is necessarily global in scale. But as far as politics is concerned, it's national in scale, confined to the sphere of the state. But the more fundamental point here that's I'm trying to make is that this is why communism and socialism is inexorably political. It is tied to the fundamental transformation of society at the level of the state. It's not reducible, obviously, to the state and the state's interventions in the economy, but in order for it to be sufficiently the commons that's in question, or our common social sphere, the only thing that unites us at this level is the state. So to treat communism as just some specific form of experimental social organization is beyond the point. Under a communist society, there may exist various different forms of social engineering experiments of how to organize people into different systems. Actually, China is a famous example of a country that did experiment with different forms of social organization, as did the Soviet Union in its early days in the 1920s. It's not this which defines a country or an economy as communist. It's the government's relationship to the economy, specifically in the form of a fundamental ownership of the means of production. And in China, this takes the form of land, right, which is the most fundamental means of production. Thereby ensuing that the means of production are to be used to fulfill expressly social ends and social purposes. In other words, the economy is rigged for the people. Now, the specifics of how that system is going to work can vary. Obviously, China is a radically different type of economy than the Soviet Union and the States in the 20th century. But that's also because they belong to different historical periods. In 20th century communism, the reason why the economy and the organization of the economy was so heavily tied to the law, as my opponent was talking about, wasn't because this was the kind of final form of communism, but because these were agrarian countries that required the baseline necessity of creating a primary level of industrialization, and one, moreover, that was independent from the West and therefore was unable to tap in to the inequalities and the concentration of capital that countries can otherwise take advantage of and kind of exploit in order to build up their own means of production. So it was required almost from scratch and from ground zero to separate the vast majority of the peasantry that resided in these communist states from their original means of production in order to undergo a process of rapid industrialization, thereby modernizing the economy and providing the people a baseline and primary standard of living. Now, before you can go compete on markets and do all the things this gentleman is talking about, you need to kind of have the baseline of medicine and ability to kind of have a base standard of living, clothe yourself, feed yourself, do all these kinds of things. And it was a turbulent and rocky road, but more or less the communist states were far more successful in being able to do this as far as the relevant countries were concerned that are comparable to them, than the capitalist ones. One only needs to take the example of China as opposed to India throughout the 20th century. There's not even a competition or a comparison. And it's true that if the communist movement is going to be successful, it in a sense does just have to happen. And Marx famously recalled that communism is not an ideal with which we want to conform society, but the real movement that sublates or transcends the present state of things. And that's precisely what communism is. It's a real movement that is, in a sense, already set in motion, and his victory is, in a sense, historically inevitable. It's just that politics is also the decisive site with which this communist transformation is going to take place. It's not specifically going to be different forms of organization for different enterprises to start up businesses. It's going to be a movement that is social in scale and addresses the real commons of a given society. Specifically in the United States, we are witnessing a transition into a completely different type of economy. The forces of production have transformed so fundamentally that tens of millions of people are at risk of losing their jobs and their livelihoods. My view is that communists are the best equipped in being able to address this common social crisis as they did in the transition from feudalism to capitalism. Now, one last quick thing is this stuff about casinos. I didn't really get to everything else. That's not specifically because of the dream of the reward. It has something to do with the relationship between systems and their contingency, right? Systems, for example, are produced in the midst of chaos, and then there lies a certain complacency when one just relegates back to norms and systems and so on and so on. But there is room for communists to appreciate the reality of the creative power of chaos. I mean, Marx himself talked about this. China does this far better than the United States, which is a very bureaucratic country with a lot of red tape. And China undergoes regularly structural reforms, which do risk systems that are already in place in the midst of chaos. Now, I wanted to talk also about this issue of trust and confidence, its relationship to the norms of civil society and so on in communist states. I don't think I'll have enough time, but we might be able to get into it afterwards. So there you go.
You got it. Thank you very much for that opening statement, Infrared. And want to let you know, folks, hey, if you have not heard, if you have been living in a cave on Mars with your fingers in your ears, we are absolutely thrilled for the first ever Modern Day Debate Con coming up in 1 month from today. And you can see at the bottom right of your screen some of the events that we are hosting there in person. And I've got to tell you, not only that, but both T-Jump and Infrared have been invited and have accepted their invites. It is going to be amazing. So want to encourage you, if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button for those juicy debates, as those will be uploaded to the channel. With that, thank you very much, gentlemen. The floor is all yours for open conversation.
Myself. He mentioned that you can't debate communism because if you debate communism, you've already conceded to communist terminology. It seems like he's defining communism as like any kind of government designed to help people. Is that right?
It's more so to do with treating the economy as a common political site of common prosperity and welfare and so on, which the government in some capacity ensures fulfills some manner of social ends. So this is not so much the essence of communism as it is something that was not a feature of 19th century classical liberal capitalism.
So any government which recognizes the economy impacts people's lives is communist?
No, a government which treats the economy as a facet of politics actively. It doesn't just recognize the economy should help people, but it ensures the economy does so.
So it sounds like what you're saying is that any government who recognizes that if they manage the economy, that can have impacts on people's lives, make it better or worse, is communist.
And that they do this. They have the macro economy as a political category and a category of political planning. Yes.
So as far as I know, literally every government has always done that throughout the history of time. Do you have like a reference of any kind of academic economist book that gives this definition? Because as far as I know, like all of them do this.
With the emergence of 19th century liberal capitalism, it is true that beforehand, for example, England had laws that, specifically in the form, and this was in the form of the ownership of land and the agrarian economy, in order to kind of, ensure some level of social reality to the economy. But with the outgrowth of capitalism, and specifically 19th century industrial capitalism, you had a fundamental social crisis and an asocial system that was arising, which had no regard for people's livelihoods. It had no regard for any type of common prosperity, and it did not proceed along this precedent path.
I have no idea what you're talking about. As far as I know, throughout all
what
history,
I'm talking about, if you have a minimal level of education, right, is what I'm talking about is the basic reality of proletarianization.
Different question. So,
and delivered into cities, right, with absolutely
would you mind letting me finish the question first before interrupting?
Go ahead.
Yeah, you said that in the I think 19th century was the first time that government was starting to be formed that just didn't care about anybody's economic status or something like that?
No, it's the first time an economy started to arise that completely that was not somehow integrated into the level of the government or their policy. So it's that the economy, it's that the forces of production outpaced the relations of production in Marxist terms.
So as far as I know, throughout all of history, that's always been the case. Throughout every economy, the economy has always been, in some case, independent and in some case dependent on the government. In the 16th century, in the 15th century, the 14th century, we can go through literally any kind of society ever. And there's always been facets that are controlled by the government.
Capitalism has been an outlier in the history of humanity.
Well, my question here is that it seems to be the case that you've simply defined any government that interferes with economies as communism, and that doesn't seem to agree.
No, I haven't. Communism only arises to face the unprecedented challenge capitalism has given to humanity. Now, governments may have appeared to, directly interfere in the economy for purposes of social ends. Retrospectively, we can see that, but it was not explicit. There was no notion of a just abstract common sociality. This always took the form of some kind of common religious or monarchical and so on, or dynastic type of community. It was never about, for example, the commons in the abstract. And what makes communism different from these previous modes of production, whether the Asiatic mode of production or feudalism and so on, or slave societies, is that communism inherits from capitalism the constant revolutionizing of the forces of production. So communism integrates this type of chaotic uplifting and uprooting of traditional ways of life, in the economic ways of life, I should say. Culture is a different story. But these economic ways of life, so-called the progress of science, this is another word for that, right? So that's what makes
another word for what?
different. But if you're basically saying that, are you implying that in a way communism does return to the norm of humanity for most of its history? I would say absolutely. And Marx actually said as much. I mean, when Marx talked about the way in which capitalism, through the land enclosures, uprooted the peasants from their traditional ways of life and their traditional common social bonds, and this radical alienation that was produced by capitalism, he was recognizing that capitalism did entail a fundamental loss of a otherwise implicit sense of community, belonging, and sociality. Marx rejected the reactionary socialists, and that was a thing, the feudal socialists, the reactionary socialists, who merely wanted to turn back the wheels of time and return to the previous state of affairs. Marx said, no, something has been irreversibly changed. But for him, communism itself was going to outmode capitalism in the same way capitalism did the previous modes of production.
Okay, so I have no idea anything you just said. So Mike, the first thing you brought up in your opening statement was that you can't debate communism because if you debate communism, you're already agreeing to the definitions of the communists. And the definition.
No, you are conceding the terms of debate.
Terms? What do you mean?
The term of debate being what system is better equipped to fulfill the common social ends of a society, right? I mean, you're not really coming at this by saying, oh, a communist society simply is impossible and that we have to make do with this anarchy of production that is capitalism. You're saying capitalism is a better system. It's a better system to improve our common livelihoods and ensure some kind of common prosperity. Right. Well, that's not a capitalist intention, right? A capitalist merely wants to make money for money's own sake. No. So you're basically saying capitalism accidentally fulfills all of the ends that the socialists and communists wanted in the past. Now you can go with that argument. It would, for me, be quite easy to dispel and dispatch, but
sure, let's go with that argument. So my argument.
You can't really just say you don't know what I mean.
Well, I didn't understand the words that you said. But let's go with that argument. So let's say that capitalism achieves more of the life standards that communism wants than communism does. I believe that is accurately the case. Why would you disagree? Yeah.
I would disagree because if the so-called capitalist system is a form of the anarchy of production, then this specific outcome that you're talking about, which was some level of commonwealth and common prosperity, is an accidental result. Science begins when, instead of relying upon accidents and things that are just like a byproduct that's not explicitly for the goal, science begins when we distill the essence of how things work and apply them. And in that case, one is entering into communism. So all it takes is a financial crisis like 2008 or some meaningless contingency to completely separate this cause from the outcome, right? The purpose of capitalism is not to ensure people's living standards and common prosperity. So things happen in capitalism which lead to people losing those things, and capitalism can still survive because capitalism's survivability doesn't depend on fulfilling common and social ends. It survives on the basis of producing profit for profit's own sake.
So yeah, it seems like your argument is that the purpose of capitalism is not to improve lives. It only does it accidentally. Therefore, capitalism isn't as good. Is that about right?
Sorry, what was the last part?
Therefore, capitalism isn't as good. Something like that.
It's not just that it's not as good. It's that the reasoning you're giving for why capitalism is superior is not itself inherent in capitalism. It's just an accidental byproduct.
Okay, so if I happen to accidentally save 1 billion lives, is that better than deliberately saving 10 lives?
Well, let's put it this way. Let's say you accidentally saved 10 billion lives while you were on your way to the store to go get a banana, something stupid like that, right?
Sure.
Then science begins when, in order to continue to save people's lives, you distill the essence of how it is you've saved those lives. Because you can really go to the store and get a banana without saving anyone's lives. You could still fulfill the goal of getting what you wanted from the store without doing that. And just in the same way, you can pursue profit for profit's own sake and make that be the driving force of your economy, which it hasn't been, by the way, in Western countries since 2008. You can make that, or you can at least accept that as the driving force of the economy, but that won't ensure that in the face of economic crisis and transformations in the forces of production, like we're witnessing right now, that it's going to lead to the common prosperity and well-being of the people.
Sure. So I think I understand your argument here. It's that capitalism does happen to have a better outcome, but that outcome isn't because of capitalism itself. And so scientifically,
I haven't conceded that. I'm not actually willing. I'm not willing to concede capitalism has a better outcome. I'm just saying I can accept that there are cases in which the capitalist mode of production has increased the overall wealth and living standards of the society. But actually, compared to communist societies, I would not concede that capitalist countries are superior.
Okay, we'll get to that in a minute. So your argument is that capitalism does improve things, but it doesn't improve things because it's the goal of capitalism. And so we need to find what the core reason of why it's improving things is and try to focus on that core reason. Is that about right?
Precisely.
All right, so the core reason is evolutionary. I gave that in my opening. The reason capitalism works is the same reason the lottery works or casinos work. People need confidence or a belief that they can win the $1 million to be interested in investing their time into doing something. So the reason this is, again, is it's not, you mentioned at the very end of your opening that this was societal or some kind of social norm. It's not a social norm. This is a biological norm. It's a biological fact due to evolution.
So how is it that we have something called human history, but we have more or less the same biology over the span of, let's say, tens of thousands of years? We have different modes of production, but we have the same biology. How can you attribute biology as the cause of capitalism when capitalism has only emerged within the past few centuries? Has our biology radically altered?
No, capitalism is what all society started as 200,000 years ago. It was essentially, I have stick, I take you.
Well done. That sounds a little absurd to me. Do you have any evidence that capitalism is what we started out with?
Yes, it's how trade started. So I have a product, you want it,
so wait,
I want your fish.
Are you equating capitalism with bartering? Because capitalism is a system in which all forms of economic intercourse revolve around the production of profit. So bartering doesn't actually do that.
Right. So the profit, I'm talking about the profit here thing. So the reason people wanted to attack tribe B is because they wanted profit. They wanted more land. They wanted more fertile stuff. They wanted more animals. They wanted profit.
That's not, no. The reason people would attack tribe A or tribe B isn't just because they wanted more for more's own sake. You have to situate it in its historical context. But regardless, even that specific form of profit, which is measured in physical and tangible things, would not be capitalist, because capitalist profit is in the form of money. And that's why in capitalism, we have generalized commodity production. And it's why Marxists talk about how before capitalism, the circuit was commodity, money, and commodity, right? You end with the commodity.
So capitalism...
Money is the means to an end to facilitate the accumulation of goods. In capitalism, commodities are the means to an end to facilitate more profit.
No, capitalism is an economic and political system where the means of production and trade is owned by private entities. That's all it is. That's all it means. So if you own stuff and you want to trade with tribe B...
First of all, that is so wrong on multiple accounts. First of all,
it's literally the definition on dictionary.
A developed, I don't care what your dictionary says. Let's analyze history. developed forms of private property as they've existed specifically in the West through the development of feudalism and so on, that was actually more or less unique to the West. That's why Marx and Engels talked about the Asiatic mode of production, which did not have a clear system of private property, right? All property was owned by the Sultan or the emperor, more or less. Now, people could use, it's a complicated system, but private property only explicitly develops as a legal category in the most advanced form in Europe and in the West, leading to liberal capitalism that we see in the beginning of the 17th through the 19th century.
So if you're just going to disagree with
if you're saying capitalism is just private property, then there's a multiple issues with that. First of all, private property has had an ambiguous status and existence throughout the duration of civilization. I could grant you that private property maybe in some form has always existed throughout every civilization, although what exactly is private in the Western sense, I wouldn't say so, but I might concede that to you. But you can't really call that capitalism, because at that point, there is no way for us to make intelligible the clearly different system that has arisen in the past few centuries from, for example, ancient, Sumeria or, the Indus River Valley civilization. It's like, you're going to say that these are all capitalists, then so what changed in the past few hundred years if we've always been capitalist societies?
No. So the argument I'm making here is,
and would you also say that the Soviet Union and China were?
I'm going to have to break it into 2-minute or maybe 3-minute segments just to be sure that we're getting.
No, that's stupid. I hate that. So it's fine. Interrupting is good. But so if you want to disagree with the definition of capitalism that's literally in every economics textbook, that's on you, not my debate. You can debate all economists on that one. But
sure.
What my question was is, if
I will bring the economists. I mean, I'm here to debate.
We can do that. We can do that later. So
I just want to ask you: is this a new system that we're witnessing for the past few hundred years, or are you saying this is all been the same?
It's a new variation on human nature, which has existed hundreds of thousands of years ago. So if we look at I'm about to answer. So if we look back at early societies, like just hunter-gatherer societies, where people made an object and they wanted to trade it to a different object, did they own the object they made, or was it owned by the city?
It was owned in common by the tribe itself. So was that really private?
Yes. So literally the individual who made the thing owned the thing, and they could use it how they wanted to.
No, there was there was no individual property rights.
I'm sorry. Do you
hunter-gatherer societies had no individual property rights at all.
Oh my God. So you've studied every single hunter-gatherer society from 150,000 years ago?
In the main, hunter-gatherer societies owned their property in common.
Where's your evidence for this? Which of the hunter-gatherer societies 150,000 years ago followed this thing? You
can make factually contestable claims, and so can I. And when you say where's your evidence, I'm on my fucking phone. First of all, what do you want me to produce? Something out of my hand? What do you mean? Where's your evidence? You're making a factually contestable claim. I'm making a factually contestable claim. So where do you want to go from here?
It was not meant to be taken literally. It's I'm making fun of how stupid your claim is by saying that people didn't own their own property.
The main consensus is that in most hunter-gatherer societies, things were owned in common.
Again, so
that's the consensus among anthropologists.
If you made an object, you could own the object and not give it to somebody. You're not obligated to give it to somebody else if they wanted to use it. You could still keep it.
You're not obligated to give it to somebody, but you don't have any rights. You don't have any legally identifiable rights.
Legally doesn't matter here. Do you have the spear? And if somebody takes it, can you stab them? Yes.
That's a really primitive and crude way of looking how these societies
work. That's how ownership worked.
There were norms in place that were based on the family and communal structure of the hunter-gatherer society as to what would be done with these products. The individual subject of the Western society did not even exist. People did things for their families, for their tribe, and for their communal society.
No, they did it for themselves.
If you made something to trade, you weren't just doing it so you can fucking make $1 to go get bubble gum at 7-Eleven. You were doing it specifically for your tribe, for your family.
No,
to
that's
do
wrong. So
something
that's
for
evolutionarily, we can
something social.
prove that wrong. Evolutionarily, we know for a fact how the brain works and how evolutionary development has worked.
You
and
don't know a
wait,
goddamn thing about how the brain works. Don't start with this idea.
Stop interrupting. Stop
All right,
interrupting.
gentlemen, just to hear
You
both
don't
of you.
even know what a
Stop
fucking
interrupting.
brain
Gentlemen,
is, dude.
gentlemen, everybody's excited to hear both of you. And so just to hear both of you, we just want to be sure that there's not too much overlap.
So as I was saying, we know for a fact, every single biologist who's ever studied biology and isn't a dumbass knows for a fact that yes, selfishness is a very, very important part, integral part of people's interactions. Do they do
There
things?
is no need.
Wait, don't interrupt. Don't interrupt.
Okay, hold on.
Don't interrupt. We know.
Finish your waste of time.
That's the plan. I plan to finish it. Thank you, Captain Obvious. We know for a fact, biology, people do things for selfish reasons. There are, in fact, mental conditions that people only do things for selfish reasons. Psychopathy and many other kinds of conditions. We know for a fact this is a thing. People do many selfish things. Do they do things for family? Occasionally, yes. The predominant motivation for most people is self-worth, individualism. We know this because if you are dying and your kid is dying in most like chimpanzees and early human societies, you survive.
You're wasting time. It's a complete waste of time.
So your ignorance in biology here is not my problem, and this didn't have to do with my.
No, you are saying something that's not relevant. There is no need to consult biology to accept the barefaced fact.
I'm getting there.
There's nothing to do with biology. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up.
There.
Shut your stupid.
All right, gentlemen, just to be sure that we hear both of you. All right, we have to go to 2-minute intervals. Hold on, gentlemen, we do have to go into 2-minute intervals just to be sure.
Could you
and I know
mute
you
him
don't
so I
like
can
it,
finish?
Tom, but that's why I like it so much. Okay,
You're wasting time. It's a waste of fucking
set a
time.
timer for 2 minutes, and what we're gonna do is when we do these 2-minute segments, I just want to be sure that we don't interrupt each other. And even if you think it's the dumbest thing you've ever heard, either side.
But he had 2 minutes. He spoke for 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, what we can do is
I've been sitting here listening to him waste my time for well over 2 minutes, so it's my turn.
No, I was not finished with my point. I had not gotten 2 minutes here.
Tom, I'll give you 30 seconds to wrap up your point, and then we've got to bring it back over.
So as I was saying, we can know the biology, and the reason this is important because the point we were talking about was biologically, people are designed to prefer capitalistic systems. This is the thing that works with biology. It works with our human nature. That's what you asked before. That was the whole point. Yes, we know for a fact this is biologically driven. Go ahead.
Gotcha. Starting.
Okay, finally. So for fuck's sake, when I talked about, first of all, there's two facets of this. The first facet, when I talked about how the reason for the system has to fulfill social ends and distill the essence of the reason, I wasn't talking about the causal reason that you're making up and pulling out of your fucking ass. And you're saying, oh, the reason for capitalism is biology. That wasn't my point. My point was the reason for the system existing was not for social purposes. Now, if you want to say the causal reason for the purpose is something inherent to our biology, that's an entirely separate argument. But if your goal is to ensure the maximal common prosperity, the reason has to be for that. That was my fucking argument. You instead decided to go on a stupid spiel about biology. So I'll say this. Consulting biology, and moreover, even more pathetically, psychology, which is even its status as a science is contested regularly. Consulting those things to address social and common and political problems is just about the most stupid fucking thing you can do, because our range of knowledge about those things is so insufficient and so limited, you cannot hold transforming or changing a society to the standard of very incomplete, imperfect, and primitive, I would say, sciences, right? But regardless, you don't need to address biology to know that most people are selfish. We just know that people are born as individuals. So obviously they're going to make it their primary focus to attend to their own needs. I'm not saying people do everything for others. I'm saying the reasons why they do things in the first place has a communal rationality. And that doesn't mean they're doing it only for the commune. It means, for example, that fulfilling their own ends, their own selfish ends, is something that is situated in the context of their status in the society and in the the community. So for instance,
And
when you're
we've got
talking about
time.
people in
Unless you guys want to,
Sorry?
we could do 3 minutes, but otherwise I've got that was 2 minutes.
Two is good. He's going to bring up way too many points. Yeah, he sounds like a Hegelian with all the gibberish he's saying that has absolutely no bearing on reality. So what he started with was he said that in the beginning we need to assess the fact that capitalism has a better impact. Capitalism itself isn't the reason. So I addressed what is the reason. The reason is biology. The reason some political systems work and some don't is because they are consistent with our biological drives. If it is inconsistent with our biological drives and motivations, it will fail, which is why a communist casino will not work, but a capitalist casino will work, even though you're more likely to lose. People want the big win, so they're, because of their biological biases, they're going to try and gamble to win. If you have a system that is aligned with our biological preconditions, it will succeed. If you have one that is not, it will fail. That is the underlying reason why capitalism works. Secondly, the accidental result thing is just an appeal to consequence fallacy or appeal to purpose fallacy. It doesn't make a difference if the result was accidental or not. Science has many accidental results, which happen to be the greatest discoveries of all mankind. The fact that it was accidental is irrelevant. All that matters is, does it work and why it works? Does capitalism work? Yes. Why does it work? It aligns with our biology, as I brought up in the opening. And he said, the most stupid thing you can do is base society on how people act in psychology. That any rational human being knows that you have to base it off psychology. That's kind of the point. If you're not basing off psychology, you're just making shit up. Duh. And he said that whenever people in a society do something, they do it because of their status in society. When someone's hungry and they steal food, or they kill their neighbor, or they rape someone, is that because of their status in society? Like, what a stupid thing to say. Like, obviously that's wrong. All right, I'll yield on to let him go on with whatever gibberish he says.
Yeah, my actual point wasn't that I didn't have time to explain the relationship between individual motivations and their social reality. But my point is, insofar as production is socially mediated in these hunter-gatherer societies, which it is, the reasons why people do things, for example, to feed your family, to feed your community, and that can be a selfish motive because it's going to elevate your own status and it's going to fulfill your own individual status. So that has nothing to do with the question of why do people rape and why do people kill. I didn't say that all the reasons people do things in every society is for communal or whatever purposes. I was talking specifically about the economic forms of intercourse in hunter-gatherer societies. Now, you're talking about how any rational person would see psychology. Why don't I just spit it out for you that psychology is 100% complete stupid bullshit, and if we had no psychologists in our society, there would be no net difference. Second of all, you're talking about how the reason for capitalist prosperity being better, something that was never conceded to you to begin with, by the way, is because of biology. That has nothing to do with the point. If it's not because of capitalism, then capitalism can lead to outcomes that are incompatible with the goal. If the reasoning you're giving for capitalism being better is that it fulfills a certain goal, which is common prosperity, that reason is not inherent in capitalism. You again do not understand the basic fucking point because you can't use basic logic. Biology and the rest of that shit has nothing to do with it. Talking about it is a waste of time. If the reason you're giving for capitalism being better is that it increases our social outcome, that reason is not inherent in the capitalist system. That's why we have capitalist crisis, mass unemployment, people being laid off their fucking jobs and having their livelihoods destroyed, while the stock market is still in the fucking green.
In time. Go ahead, Tom.
All right, so clearly this ignoramus doesn't understand how an appeal to consequence fallacy works. Like, the fact that capitalism, whether it has an ingrained purpose of actually making society better, is irrelevant. If it happens to work and it works better objectively, whether or not it was designed to do that is irrelevant. I think it's a genetic fallacy, the appeal to its origin or something. There are many scientific discoveries that were made purely by chance, not because they were designed that way. There was no intentionality in making these things. Penicillin, Viagra, plastic, microwaves, Vaseline, strikeable match, gunpowder, cornflakes, anesthetics. All of these were just by chance, by scientists messing around with stuff as an accident of some other thing they were doing. The fact that it's an accident that capitalism happens to have the best effects for people's lives doesn't matter at all. It's just an appeal, like probably an appeal genetic fallacy. I'm going to go with the genetic fallacy, where he's just saying, oh, well, because its intention wasn't to help people, then it doesn't matter if it happens to help more people, which is clearly batshit. Clearly, he doesn't understand basic philosophical argumentation here. Saying that all of the world would be better without psychology, how dumb do you have to be? There's been tons and tons of amazing discoveries in psychology, like Oliver Sacks, V.S. Ramachandran. Tons of psychologists made great discoveries that have benefited the world significantly. He just seems to be ignorant of basic science. I'm like, wow. I'll conclude there for now.
Kick it over to you.
Yeah, I don't really give a shit about your dumb soy Reddit fallacy, fucking logic word, dumb shit. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of what you actually fucking said. Scientists find out that you can discover things accidentally all the time. Fine, even if I were to concede that to you, that has nothing to do with the point, that there is a discontinuity between the reason for why capitalism, the procedural reason for capitalism, and the outcome. If you are saying that the outcome is what matters primarily, and that is the reason for its superiority, the fact that that is not inherent to capitalism doesn't mean that I'm saying capitalism didn't produce that outcome, which is wealth and a good standard of living. And that's something we have to debate, by the way, because it's not something I even conceded. But granted, even if I did, if that is the reason for why it is better, just use basic logic, then if that is not inherent in capitalism, then there will inevitably arise, just based on fucking chance itself, just based on chaos and randomness itself, that there will be a disjuncture. You can still accumulate profit for profit's own sake. The stock markets will be in green, but the outcome that you're giving for why capitalism is better won't be produced. That's my point. It has nothing to do with this dumb Reddit soy whatever fallacy you're talking about, because that would be an argument that it couldn't have produced that outcome. Well, I'm not saying it can't produce that outcome. I'm just saying it's not essential to what capitalism is. And by the way, you're saying capitalism just works. I can test that. How did capitalism work in 1929? How did it work in 73? How does it work in 2008? Something we still haven't even recovered from. Our economy is not even based on capitalist profits anymore. It's based on quantitative easing and the printing of money and government credit. Just recently, we're seeing an implosion of the global capitalist system as we speak. How the fuck can you say that it's just working? It's simply and patently not. Finally, as regards this question of psychology, psychologists can give us nice insights that are nice to think about, but they have no practical utility and no practical value whatsoever. So I repeat and I reiterate, if there were no psychologists on earth or in history, there would be no net difference as far as the meat and potatoes of our daily lives is concerned.
Time. Tom?
So the dumb soy Reddit fallacy is the fact that he doesn't understand that because something happens to be a side effect doesn't mean it's not the absolute best at that side effect. He seems to think that it must be innate, ingrained into the purpose of the design in order to make it the best at something. No, that's why I listed all of those different scientific things people have discovered. Penicillin is like the best antibacterial ever discovered, and it was never designed to be an antibacterial. The fact that something can happen by chance doesn't mean it's not the absolute best at the thing, because saying that it's not ingrained into the purpose doesn't mean it's still not the best thing ever designed ever. Just basic logic here. Yes, capitalism is working. You know how I know that? Because more people are alive and have food and technology than ever before in human history. Capitalism is the dominating thing everywhere. Mixed economy, capitalism plus socialism, but capitalism is the thing. Yes, it works. If saying it doesn't work is like saying Boeing 747s don't work. Yes, they do. They're flying. It right there. It's doing the thing. You lose. Again, like his basic ignorance of basic psychology is absolutely pathetic. There's so much work that's been done in psychology that has a significant impact on our everyday lives, like understanding the car crash experiment, how multiple different angles of people looking at car crashes have different conclusions, and how bad testimony is and why it isn't accepted in court, and how it overthrew a bunch of false convictions because we learned how bad testimony was, or how understanding how recognition works in children and how they learn from growing up, and how that helps us to better teach them so that they can learn faster and better. And have different cognitive disabilities that like autism and synesthesia and all these different things, which are learned by psychology to help improve people's lives. Yeah, psychology has had a huge impact. You're just basically ignorant of pretty much everything in science. I will conclude there.
Yeah, science, psychology has absolutely zero impact. All those things you're talking about, what the courts treat seriously and they don't treat seriously is completely arbitrary, and it always has been. So don't use the fucking court fallacy as an example. Regarding how to raise children, and psychology teaches us how to raise children
I'm
better.
okay with, hold on, pardon me, I'll give you the time back. I'm going to pause it, but just for both of you, in terms of psychology, at some point, hopefully we get back to some of the more direct arguments for and against communism, capitalism.
Yeah, I'll just wrap it up with this. Whatever you're talking about is psychology is good at raising children and treating people's desire to be happy. Yeah, but the communal societies that have predominated, whether feudalism or even slave societies, whatever you want to call it, before capitalism, all of these traditional societies were far better at traditional villages in the countryside in random third world countries are better at fucking raising children than what psychologists are gonna fucking tell you for anything, right? So that's Lindy. That's been tried and tested. It's worked for hundreds and thousands of years even. So yeah, psychologists haven't proven their worth in that regard either. But finally, regarding this thing of like, oh, with the discovery of penicillin, we can find that it's the best at producing that result. But that is what we are debating about. Capitalism is not essentially the best at producing the result. Maybe it has produced that result. Maybe it hasn't. I'm arguing right now specifically it hasn't, and it's failing at doing that. And we'll get into that debate in a second. But it is not essential to the capitalist system that the living standard, that this byproduct will happen. It is essential to the procedure that's replicated afterwards, and these accidental scientific discoveries you're talking about it, that they do produce this outcome. Now, that may not be the reason, like for their creation of the procedure, but that has nothing to do with my argument in the first place. I'm not arguing that because capitalism wasn't designed to make people's standard of living better, that this is why it inevitably leads to this contradiction I'm talking about, which you have yet to address even once, by the way, in the form of the various capitalist crises and the current crisis that we're facing. All I was talking about is how it is inessential to capitalism. The burden of proof is upon you to prove that the capitalist type of system we have, which is basically Europe, America, and other countries that are under the fucking tyranny of the IMF and its policies. The burden of you is to prove that this is the essentially best way. And you're saying, oh, capitalism works because people are being fed and people are living and surviving. Well, is capitalism essential to that? Because the capitalist system, the fundamental basis of that financially is collapsing right now as we speak.
To the next segment. Go ahead, Tom, 2 minutes.
Yeah, it's definitely not. Like saying that because there are problems with capitalism, therefore it's not working, is like saying LeBron James missed a few times, therefore he sucks at basketball. Like clearly the fact that it works in most cases and that we see the standard of living increasing for everyone everywhere by a significant margin kind of outweighs the little weaknesses it has here and there. All the economic crises, like take the one in 2008, what did it do to like world hunger? Not much. We still all got food, still lived. It got better. Capitalism worked. There was a problem, which happens to every system, and then it overcame that problem, and not millions of people died. What happens in communism? Mass starvation, millions of people die. So capitalism wins on that one. The fact that it has challenges doesn't mean it doesn't work. All systems have challenges, not an actual criticism. Next, you said that communism is inevitable. Well, that's quite strange since everyone's going away from it at a quite fast rate. It seems more like capitalism is inevitable because it exists. Again, the way to actually do this debate is go make a company. Go do it. Go, if you think your political and your economic system will work, go start a company. Get off your butt, off your Twitch channel, go start a company. That's what I'm doing. I'm starting a company because I actually understand economics and philosophy and psychology and fallacies and everything that you don't. I actually know how to make this work in practice instead of just talk about it with a beard. I will conclude there.
Yeah, the first thing you said was something more or less along the lines of capitalism is continuing to work because it's alleviated so many people out of poverty and it's solving global hunger. The overwhelming majority of poverty alleviation that's attributed to capitalism within the last few decades has come from China. And it's specifically because China is not a capitalist economy that we see such a rapid alleviation of people from poverty. Now, if you ask Chinese Marxists why in other countries the standard of living seems to be going up, nowhere near at the rapid pace as China's growth, but people are getting a little more access to food and healthcare. I know all these things are debated heavily, so I'll just concede it, which is a really big advantage to you that I'm just conceding that because it is something debated. But the reason for that isn't because of capitalism, it's because the forces of production overall are being developed and generated. But we're seeing a lot of countries reaching an upper limit in being able to develop their own forces of production because the capitalist path isn't cutting it. For you to underplay and downplay the global capitalist crisis that we're now witnessing simply because of this stupid Steven Pinker bullshit idea that, well, everything's been pretty good so far, and then this is like LeBron's success, you underestimate the extent to which all of these processes that ensure people can feed themselves and clothe themselves and so on are dependent on extremely esoteric financial abstractions like derivatives and securities and the global capitalist financial system, which when it finally does completely implode, or at least implode to such an extent that it leads to a fundamental political economic crisis, all of those things will suddenly become vulnerable, right? Because the economy is not based on ensuring those type of things in the first place. Now, finally, you say, why don't you just go start? Oh, you mentioned the communist countries lead to famine and whatever. Listen, in the history of the development of capitalist economies, you take all of the worst famines in the communist states combined, and it is nowhere near the extent to which the emergence of capitalism fundamentally led to the famine, death, genocide, completely eradication of whole peoples in the form of colonialism, slavery, and so on and so on. The famines in India under British colonial rule, the Irish potato famine, all of these type of different things scratching the surface wiped out way more people as a proportion of their population than the communist states. The communist states merely had the burden of not having colonies overseas with which to burden with the inevitable disruptions in the form of the agricultural production that capitalist modernization leads to. So don't give me this shit.
I think that was time.
That's time. We got to kick it over to Tom.
I think that was time.
Throwing history on
we got to kick it over to Tom. Go ahead, Tom.
So yeah, apparently he's using China as his shining example of communism. Yes, we love those camps where they just put anyone who they disagree with and then harvest their organs. Communism is great. Love the Chinese communism. Phenomenal example of communism. Yes, clearly there are economic crises coming on in the debt crisis, which is, guess what? Also a thing in China. China's in more debt. Congratulations, son. Your own system has the same problem. Secondly, most of these can be solved with different kind of economic policies. The fact that they collapse doesn't necessarily mean that the entire economy is going to collapse. Like the banking collapse, it did happen. Many banks went down and the economy dipped, but then it recovered. It wasn't like an entire collapse, unlike what happens in communist countries where everyone dies. So yes, you mentioned the rapid alleviation of poverty. Apparently he doesn't know how statistics work. If you have the most people in poverty living off $1 a day and you increase them to $2 a day, then yes, you've alleviated a significant amount more poverty than people who make $20 an hour. It's going to be harder to alleviate poverty in that country because the standard of living is significantly higher. So yes, China is alleviating poverty because they have the most people in poverty, other than like India. So that's an example against your case and why China and communism is crap, not why it's good. All right, back to the argument. He said communism is the best equipped to solve unemployment. Well, then why does China have so many unemployed people? Why does every communist country have so many unemployed people if it's the best to employed? I'm still waiting for him to start his own company. I'm going to do it. I'm working on it. I've done it. I'm actually doing these things. Does he have any plans? Can he try this for us? I'd like to point and laugh when his company collapses because it's a crap idea. That would be incredibly interesting. And he mentioned something about systems and contingency is the reason that casinos work, not because people want to win money. That is just so stupid. The reason casinos work is because people want to win money. That's the point. And then he said something that China does something better than the U.S. I'd like to know what that is. Be very interesting. Harvesting organs, they do that a lot better than America. Imprisoning
Yeah.
Uyghurs?
All right, so you're basically throwing a bunch of shit at the wall, waiting for something to stick. 1,000 different things. I'll go one by one. The camps thing, complete bullshit. Organ harvesting, complete bullshit. Falun Gong propaganda. Now you're also talking about China also having a lot of debt. Yeah, that doesn't change the fucking fact that when you have things like the Evergrande collapse in China, it doesn't lead to the destruction of the entire economy, and the Chinese government doesn't bail those companies out. It's the free market in practice. Now you're saying that China only can attribute its success in poverty alleviation to the fact that China was the poorest country in the world. No, it fucking wasn't. India was always poorer than China. It still is. The countries in Africa were always way poorer than China. They still are. The same goes for Latin America and actually most of the world. China's not even a third world country anymore. It's now a middle ranking country according to most categories. So no, for you to underplay China's poverty alleviation, why can't India do the same fucking thing? India has such an extreme level of poverty that it would make the fucking amount of poverty that existed in China pale in comparison. It's so bad. It was so bad for India in the 20th century that even during the Great Leap Forward famine in China, there were more deaths as a proportion of per capita of the population due to malnutrition in India than there was in China during its fucking famine. So don't sit here and try to underplay China's success in poverty alleviation. Finally, you're saying things like, I don't remember all the dumb shit you said. You said something about how, what is China doing better than America? I don't know, developing its forces of production, building national infrastructure, poverty alleviation, and ensuring a baseline standard of living, building cities. I mean, what do you want? There's like literally a million different things China's better at doing. Finally, on this question of unemployment, sorry to burst your fucking bubble, but the unemployment rates in communist states have always been lower than in capitalist countries. Not even pro-liberal capitalist economists would deny this. It's a really stupid angle to come with when it comes to that. And I don't remember the other shit. Oh yeah, the stuff about starting a company. You haven't yet to address my initial rebuttal to that claim, which is that you can create a vacuum sealed environment with which to test these types of theories. I argued this in the very beginning of our debate about how communism and socialism is necessarily national and political in scale. You didn't address the fucking argument, so shut the fuck up about me starting a company.
What's the argument? Because I did vacuum sealed something. What's the argument?
You're saying that communism is just a different form of social organization that you can implement in a vacuum sealed like environment of a company or a business. That's not what communism is. Simple as that. I don't care if Bosch and all these other type of people are saying it's just workers managing the means of production.
No, I don't understand what you mean here.
Every communist theorist has recognized that communism is political in scale and encompasses the entirety of the economy and not isolated units or businesses. It's a really odd argument you're making.
Wait, I'm not understanding. So like if China is a country, it supposedly implements communism by your standards. So isn't that an isolated system?
It's not isolated. How is it isolated?
Well, this is why I'm not understanding. Like, can a country adopt communism while other places don't?
Is socialism in one country possible? Yes, of course it's possible.
Okay.
But the difference is it's not vacuum sealed because China's growth and rise has already fundamentally changed our global economy right now. We just haven't really awakened to it yet. China has been China is what kept our global economy chugging after 2008.
So you can implement so you can implement communism in like a country or a business. You can do it that way. It'll have impacts on other economies too.
Not the theoretical basis for socialism in one country is about the level of the state. So politics is about states. There's no such thing as a global politics, maybe beyond geopolitics, but we don't have a global state. So yes, communist politics is going to be at the level of the state.
So it's
not a vacuum sealed. But that's not a vacuum sealed, isolated environment.
Wait. So if you owned a company, you could treat it as if you were the president and give it the same kind of communist policies you think would be good, yeah?
No, you couldn't. You couldn't because communism encompasses the whole of a polity. A polity is not just a business top down. It's civil society, the state, the organs of the state and civil society in the form of corporates, as Hegel would call it, I guess. A polity is national in scale, or at least even civilizational in scale, if you want to call it that. It encompasses the relation between citizen and state. Unless a company is going to encompass every facet of life politically, and it's actually going to be a political power, a sovereign political power, it's not going to apply. Communism is at the level of sovereign polity. It's not at the level of local businesses.
So it seems like you're just basically ignorant of how politics works. Like a country and a business are essentially the same things. The relationship between the
That's the most
president. Wait,
stupid dog
wait,
shit
wait.
I've
2 minutes. I'm still in my 2 minutes.
a
I'm
country-
in my 2 minutes.
Are you?
A
Let's give
country
Tom.
and a
Well,
business
just
I'm
to
in
are
my 2 minutes.
qualitatively
I want to
different
give
things.
Tom that 2 minutes.
I'm
as well.
in my 2 minutes.
Go ahead, Tom. Go ahead.
So you can have a company and you can treat it as if it's your own country. You have the country of the company and you can treat it how you want, and you have to interact with other companies and other states and whatever, and you're going to have to treat them like they exist, just like China has to treat America like it exists. You can treat a company just like you could a country. Pretend it's your own little country and treat it that way. It's not very hard. If you do, it'll fail because it's a crap system, and you'll learn real quick why it's a crap system. But that's the point here, is that you can do nothing. By your own admission, you can do nothing except just whine on Twitch about how you want global politics to change.
Yeah.
I can actually do something. I can start a company like, hey, look, here's my economic policy and it works. And I can act as someone to inspire others, and they can I'm going to start a company and use that political system too, because it works, and I can do it. But yours is just crap because no one can do it. It requires global change. Doesn't that give you some indication that your system is kind of bullcrap, that it requires an entire global change to implement, and you can't do it on an individual level? Why do you think that if it can be done on an individual level, a system may be more prolific than one that must take global stances? Do you think that might be a bit of a problem for your silly system?
No, it's not a problem at all. The only problem here is your deranged LARP fantasies about replicating a state in a country at the level of a company. That is 100% LARP. And don't get me wrong, LARPing looks like it's fun. You probably look like you know a lot about LARPing and stuff. You look like a guy who LARPs. But anyway, you're treating it as a LARP. You're doing what those dumb people who try to find islands in the middle of the Mediterranean do, which is, I want to create my own state. Listen, unless you have political sovereignty on bond of violence and a monopoly on violence, those kinds of things, you do not have a state or a country. When you have a cult, which is not even a country, but so much as a cult, that it claims to have this level of sovereignty, it is such a threat to the state and to the U.S. federal government even, that it finds excuses like in Wacko to go and raid and whatever that shit. That is how important political sovereignty over the citizens of your country is for a state. So no, a business is not just different from a country in terms of the quantitative scale. It is a qualitatively different thing. Now, it does involve the mobilization and command of bodies from a central command. That's not the essence of politics. That's LARP, right? Just how LARPers want to reenact the glorious fights of the Middle Ages on a battlefield where I'm using a sword and I'm wearing the outfit. What's different? What's different is the fact is that your individual experience of something is not the same as the actual material reality of that thing. A country isn't the same as the business. You can't replicate it at an individual scale like how you're saying, because what communism is addressing is our common sociality in the first place. It's addressing the common, something beyond our individuality. That's why communism has always been radically opposed to Western liberal individualism. It's addressing something beyond us, but which at the same time conditions us, right? So what you're saying is, why can't you, isn't it a problem? It's not a fucking problem. It's an issue of politics. Communism for Marx, he called it the riddle of history solved. He said it is the real movement already in motion. All communism more or less means is that the economy is tending toward not only an increased level of socialization, but an increasing conditioning of the purpose and rationality of the mode of production for the fulfillment of social and common aims of humanity. There you go.
All right, so I'm ready to just give a closing statement, go to Q&A. I think I've destroyed this guy enough. So just basic facts. It's really hard to make a successful political model that can accommodate people's feelings enough to motivate them to participate in the economic game and give them confidence. Most political systems fail, meaning most people lose confidence and start breaking the rules, such as high rates of theft or crime or whatever else, and the economy becomes unstable. Like the Bolsheviks making their own economy and Russia not liking that because they need theirs to work. Like if you have a crap economy, like any communist economy, it's going to lose confidence and people are going to start making their own economies like Hong Kong or Taiwan, and they're going to leave because yours is shit. And so in order to make a successful system, and by successful I mean most people not dying of starvation or crime or poverty like in China, and having crappy, poor living standards like in China. To make a society where people are not dying is very hard. This is why conservatives have a valid point that the society we build works. The society we have built works very well and keeps most people alive in good condition by historical standards, all historical standards. And making changes puts that at risk. Most changes will have some negative effect and will fail. Research and development is the most expensive part of any company. Failure is the common thing, not success. We have to change things slowly. Like, the only way that a communist system could work is if we had AI overlords who governed everything and humans were not in control. Until then, it's a crap system. You have to accommodate humans' feels, and it's not going to work.
You got it in, Fred. We'll give you your closing as well.
Yeah. So you didn't really understand the point about the casino and the system and the contingency. And the reason is basically this. When you have any given system, when you have any given set of norms and laws and structures, whatever you want to call that, what that has originated from can't entirely be accounted by the system itself. So systems will have blind spots in which the contingent chaos of the external and outward reality out of which the system has been born and molded from, that will be a source of novelty and innovation. So when you're talking about gambling, you are betting on what you don't know. You're betting on what you can't be certain about. And that's what's going to yield more results, because the material source of wealth, for example, in the form of nature, in the form of external reality of natural resources and the reality of science and technological innovation, we don't know all of those things, right? So we are going to produce more novel results and innovative results and more wealth when we take risks, that come at the expense of the systems that are already tried and true. But what we are seeing in today's global economy is rather curious in that regard, because we're seeing in capitalist countries stagnating establishments pegged to rentier monopolists who have fundamentally stifled any semblance of a free market, stagnating bureaucracies, salaried parasites that are living off of the labor of the majority of the population and producing no wealth in terms. The complete safe spacing, if you will, of the entirety of the economy. There's no longer any room for large systemic wide risk, right? So you have a very much socialistic, in the colloquial bad sense of the term, according to right-wingers, economy that's emerging in the capitalist West and its adjacent countries. While in communist China, you have a paradigm of constant and never-ending structural reform. Clamp down on the monopolies and help the little guy. That is a fundamental systemic risk, because monopolies have the precedent of working already, while the little guy and the promotion of small to mid-tier companies isn't something that you don't know what they're going to do or what. And so all of that here's room for communism to integrate that dialectic between systems and chaos. So it's completely beyond the point. I don't have time to address the other shit you were saying, but about Taiwan and Hong Kong being isolated systems, which is not fucking true and betrays a complete lack of any understanding of
let's jump into the Q&A, but don't worry. You'll have a chance to address some of those, because I'm sure a lot of it will come up. But do want to let you know, folks, a couple of things. As we had mentioned, we are 100% pumped that both of these gentlemen, both Tom, right up there, and Infrared, will be at the Modern Day Debate DebateCon conference in Dallas in a month. And we are absolutely pumped, my dear friends, that we are doing a crowdfund in order to cover the cost of the speakers' flights, as well as the venue and hotel nights for the speakers. And so what we are doing right now is throwing in basically the Indiegogo link. We encourage you, help us make this event possible, as we are absolutely pumped for it. It's going to be juicy, and I'm throwing that link into the live chat right now. But in the meantime, jumping into the Q&A, thanks for your question coming in from Bubblegum Gun. Says this is literally average capitalism fan versus communism enjoyer. Is this some sort of slang insult?
He's saying we're both pedants and we don't know enough about what we're talking about. Like, he's saying we're not experts on the topic.
Thank you, Thomas. And so sorry. Infrared space. Okay, next one. And Prim Blady 69 says, T-Jump, does Neo China arrive from the future?
What? Does arrive from what? Doesn't even make any sense.
They said, does Neo China arrive from the future?
So to arrive from the future would mean you'd have to start in the future and go back in time. The question literally does not make sense.
This one coming in
Reddit
from
moment.
Mango T says, T-Jump, let's be honest, all these economic models came from demonically possessed individuals. The West are filled with demonically possessed people.
Yep. I mean, most of them.
I actually unironically kind of agree with that.
Well, yeah, most of society is based on religious-based ideas like Islam and Christianity. So I can get behind that.
This one coming in from Nance says, is this the pee hole guy? I would beat Tom Jump on this. Pee hole. What are you been talking about your pee hole on stream, Tom? What's going on here?
I don't know what that means.
Next up, MB Khan says T-Jump should stick to debating flat earthers. He's out of his depth here. Next up, SJ Thomason, a longtime friend of the channel and of T-Jump, says, if I work hard, should I expect to be paid well? Of course, this is the communist problem. And Fred, we'll give you a chance to respond.
It has nothing to do with communism. Even in the Soviet Union, which is an example of an economy doomed to stagnate because of its systemic rigidness and so on, you had differentials in compensation based on the extent to which people worked. But I think with the example of China, I just think this is an obsolete argument. Like, it's not an issue at all.
You got it, Ann. Thank you very much for your question. Coming in from ASEAN says, I do think it's normal of us to want a social contract theory of government to help foster our own desires without fear of others.
Sure. That's what governments do.
This one coming in from ASEAN as well says, how do you promote a supposedly science-based economic model like communism by denying science? Free markets win again.
Yeah. So when Marx and Marxists used the term science, they were referring to a specific kind of esoteric German sense of the word from German philosophy. As far as this Reddit science, which is really just a form of religious exaltation of the current network of research papers and institutions and establishments of universities in America and in Europe, I do proudly say fuck science. I am a Lysenkoist. I don't care about scientific consensus. All scientists could suck my nuts. You know what I mean? So there you go.
A Lysenkoist? Really?
Of course.
RT96 says wiki/category Soviet psychologists fake in all caps.
He just said he was a Lysenkoist, which is like literally a proven false method of biology. Like
nothing has been proven false. Nothing.
Mango T says, Infrared, do you believe capitalism turns the populace into independent and strong people, whereas communism turns the populace into slaves and dependents?
The opposite is true. We see as the result of the capitalist economy an increasingly overly socialized populace of soy drinking, a safe space riddled, politically correct, completely lack of manhood. You don't have any strong individuals in our increasingly capitalist society. Amazon, all this big tech. Where are the strong and independent individuals? We have none. We have city-dwelling snowflakes that are ruling over us and ruling over the American people, moreover, in the United States. This is the result of capitalism, whereas communism, by attending to our common social needs and questions, does lead to strong and independent individuals. I mean, what do you think is more strong? A Starbucks drinking soy boy in the United States, or, for example, a Soviet farmer who's, hunting with a pack of wolves in the forest or something? I mean, just really use common sense,
Like Xi Jinping, you think he's a manly man?
Of course.
This one coming in from RT96. Oh, got that one. Mango T says, Infrared, why are communists always angry? Forgive your mother and become a man and start your own business and benefit from capitalism. Amazing.
I just want to tell that dude to suck my nuts. Second of all, I'm angry because I've been spending 5 hours today trying to fix my internet. So I'm on my phone right now, actually. Wasn't able to stream today. So yeah, I am angry. They told me the estimated time that they were going to fix it was 8:30 p.m., 30 minutes before the show. Turns out they lied and they pushed back the date. So yeah, I am angry. But, you're saying, why are communists always so angry and shit? Because you're fucking annoying, dude. Why don't you be, a little bit more pleasant? I'm talking to the chatter specifically. People like you, be more pleasant, than you won't give me a reason to be angry.
You got it. I do want to give credit. I want to give huge credit. No, I'm dead serious. That infrared, seriously, especially while I was badgering him with emails while he was trying to set up. I'm so sorry. Really do. We appreciate you persevering and being here. So we really do. Seriously, I'm dead serious about that. So Mango T says, oh, that's Mark Reed. Says, Inford, why do you trash psychologists when they help people with mental health issues? Do you think that mentally disturbed people would be better off without psychologists existing or without professional help?
No, I'm not downplaying that therapists help people. Therapists do help people. They help people work through their problems. It's usually by fostering interpersonal relationships. And I'm not saying you won't learn anything from psychology as a therapist. I'm just saying when you try to apply that to a social scale and have like policies that apply to all of us, that's where things get fucked up, right? If you're talking about, getting advice from someone who's studying, maybe some things will work, maybe they won't work. I'm not against it. I'm not against that kind of thing. But making policies based on this very, very inconsistent, whatever, it's not an airtight discipline, right? So whenever I see people talk about like communism or capitalism and make references to biology or psychology, it's just, especially psychology, it's like, it's laughable, right? This psychology is only going to apply at like its utility at an individual or somewhat small interpersonal level. The minute you try to apply it to a scale larger than that, you're going to have absurdities and stupidity.
You got this one coming in from Sphincter of Doom. Says 1929 was due to regulations disallowing banks to diversify and the ensuing Smoot-Hawley tariff. 2008 was due to subsidized risk by government-backed Fannie and Freddie Mae or Freddie Mac, i.e. government distorting signals.
Partially.
2008, I will give you some, but 1929, you're completely off the mark and wrong about that. But regardless, let me just, even if I were to concede you both of those things, why does capitalism lead to this monopoly kind of ruling, socialism for the rich, where the economy becomes rigged to protect the monopolies and the ruling class? And why is it that you need communist heavy-handed states to crack down on monopolies and help the little guy and foster the free market like we see in China? It's a paradox worth consideration.
You got it, and thank you very much for your question. This one coming in from Long Nights YouTube and says, T-Jump. They actually put Trump. I don't know if that was a Freudian slip in their typing or what. They say, T-Jump, do you think trickle-down economics worked?
Sort of. Like, trickle-down economics works in the fact that technologies are produced and then sold at lower prices, and those technologies trickle down. The money doesn't. So if your goal with trickle-down economics is to have income or wealth equality, no, it doesn't work. But mostly the goal of trickle-down economics is to get an increased trickle-down standard of living, which in that sense it has worked. So it kind of depends on what your goal is. It's definitely not a moral system. There's better ways to do it, but in a sense, it's worked.
You got it, and thank you very much for your question. This one coming in from Sphincter of Doom says, China's reduction in poverty is due to it becoming less communistic and more capitalistic, opening markets up to competition.
That's just not true. The communist Soviet model system that existed in the 20th century wasn't more or less communist. It was more. It just had more involvement, direct involvement by the state in the economy. That's not really the essence of what communism is. The essence of communism is a state, is a polity, and is an economy that is rigged toward ensuing the common prosperity of the people, which the Chinese system has done actually better than it did. I mean, it served different. It was two stages of its existence. The old Soviet-inspired model did what it was meant to do, which was create a national industrial system, create a primary basis of the economy. And then beyond that, they did have more allowances for markets and private exchange and all these kinds of things. But as we can see, this is perfectly compatible with China's unique form of socialism. So it's not that it became more capitalist, it's that it opened itself to the global economy, and it also took advantage of the independent form of capital accumulation, primitive capital accumulation that was a result of the Great Leap Forward.
This one coming in from Mango T says, Infrared, do you believe the reason capitalism is, quote, failing is because the young generation are brainwashed with the poor communist mindset?
No, this is not a communist mindset. It's a mindset that corresponds to the fact that the people controlling our lives and raising our children now it's all coming from these stagnant, overly socialized monopolies. The big tech companies are a good example. The financial institutions are a good example. The corporations are a good example, and they want to save their position. So you think it seems like communism to you because the free market is being stifled, but it's not. It's a capitalist ruling class trying to protect its power at all costs. It has nothing to do with communism, is what I'd say.
You got it. This one coming in from Do Appreciate It Mango T says, Infrared, do you realize capitalism is in alignment with the laws of nature? The strong have the food and the rest need to find their own food or work.
Yes,
Again,
nature is immoral. It's horrible.
I don't see anything capitalist about that. You can have a communist society where people have to work to get what they need. We have enough wealth so that people, even in a capitalist country, we have enough wealth so people don't have to starve. I mean, if you need food, you can get food for free, even in America, right? It's a level of starvation. But, I get what you're saying. This level of competition or whatever you're talking about exists in communist states. It exists in China. It's always existed and even existed in the Soviet Union. So yes, the strong will do better than the people who are not strong. And I agree, that's not something communism is going to eliminate. You have to understand, it's not a question of the individual versus the society. Society is controlling us either way. Look at how much we're controlled by big tech and the monopolies. It's a question of, is this going to serve the people and the health and well-being of the people, or is it going to serve a tiny minority of elites? So that's the choice you're faced with.
You got it. And this one from Turbo says, Infrared, by the way, have to give you a quick debate challenge from someone after this question, but Turbo says, Infrared, is Taiwan not part of China, or are you based?
Taiwan is 100% part of China. Taiwan is called formally by its own government the Republic of China. And the minute that, Taiwan's separatism has been suppressed for decades, they recently opened up because of American influence. But if they do try to secede from China and claim that Taiwan is an independent country, China will respond swiftly to that fact. I mean, regardless of whether you like communism or not, both the nationalist government, Republican government in Taiwan, and the communist government in China both came to an agreement that we will not cut China in two. These are both China. They just disagree about who should be in charge.
You got it. And speak of the devil, Infrared, your brother Dylan Burns is interested in a debate with you in person at DebateCon on this very question.
Yeah, well, I'll be there, so
Is he an ANCAP?
Are you interested?
Whoever I have to debate, I'll debate. I'm gonna be there, so I'll debate anyone.
I thought Dylan,
juicy.
Isn't Dylan a communist? I thought he was, or an ANCAP.
Next up, this one coming in from Spectre of Doom says, slavery isn't unique to capitalism. The Irish potato famine was exacerbated by government disallowing exports/imports. Something occurring with capitalism existing does not equal that it's due to capitalism.
Okay, well, this is the kind of it's not real capitalism type of thing. And look, I'm kind of sympathetic because I see libertarians as utopian socialists. You guys critique the system and you critique people in power. You just don't recognize that the cause and the effect aren't separate. The reason why capitalism leads to this form of state, subsidies and rigging of the and restrictions and all this kind of stuff is because it's inherent to the system itself. You can't separate the two, right? But regardless, my point was, I mean, if you're just going to say that all the instances of barbarity and starvation and slaughter and genocide and famine in the history of capitalism is because of the state and not capitalism, the question stands: is there a single example of a country or a civilization that is purely just capitalist and has none of the bad socialism that you're attributing it to? There's none, because the two are inexorably linked. The state ensures that the ruling class maintains its power, and capitalism is inexorably tied to the power of the state. It always has been.
You got it, Ann. Thank you very much for your question. This one coming in from ASEAN says, I must have missed that one. Sphincter of Doom says, communism is by definition stateless. It can't be national in scale.
The ultimate consequences that the real movement that is communism will have for society is the dissolution of the state and the dissolution of money and all these kinds of things. But that is like the ultimate consequence it will have for society. That doesn't mean communism can't be national in scale. You're just thinking communism is like an ideal, to quote Marx, with which society conforms itself to, and it's not. So if you're going to say eventually a communist society will lead to the dissolution of the state and will become global in scale, that can be entertained, right? That's a prediction, but you can't say a country is not communist because it still has a state, or it still has money, or it still has commodities, and so on. Because communism is a process, not an end goal, and Marx literally said as much.
You got it, Ann. Thank you very much for this question. Coming in from Mark Reed says, come on, T-Jump. Starting a private company to prove communism is like having sex to prove chastity. Or says, come on, T-Jump, you can make better arguments than that.
Well, since we're in a company in a country that allows you to make private companies, you can make a private company and then make it like a co-op. So you can make it a publicly owned thing. So there are many co-ops in America, like REI co-op, especially in Minnesota. So it doesn't need to be a privately owned company. You can make it a publicly owned company or a co-op, and it's perfectly fine. So it's a perfectly valid argument there.
Next one, Sphincter of Doom says, I got here late, but it appears neither interlocutor understands what capitalism or communism actually is. Ooh, sounds like that's a challenge. I got to tell you, Sphincter of Doom, I'm not affirming his derogatory comment toward you guys and stuff, and I will say that he's a quality debater. So if you guys would enjoy that, he's talking some real smack. He also says infrared seems to have confused the rise of the welfare state in the 20th century, creating sheep versus capitalism.
There is a reason capitalism has led to this so-called welfare state you're talking about. And the reason is simply because there is no such thing as a pure capitalist free market system. It's a pipe dream, and it's a form of utopianism. That's why I say that free market libertarians, to me, are the same as utopian socialists. I sympathize with them. They have the right problem, but not the right solution.
You got it, Juicy. And thank you very much for this one coming in from S.J. Thomason says, infrared, are the Chinese people happy about the concentration camp for the Uyghurs?
Listen, if you want to keep repeating CIA narratives unquestioningly without doing any research or studying the problem, I don't know how much I can do for you within the allotted time span to dispel this myth. I recommend you educate yourself on this so-called camps and the so-called Uyghur genocide, which I don't even think the mainstream media is really saying it exists anymore, right? The AP Press recently released an article that conveniently is talking about how, wow, it seems like in Xinjiang the genocide's over and they're relaxing all control and you're seeing people on the streets, because they can't maintain this narrative they've been trying to peddle for the past few years, and it's completely collapsed. So this is the wrong time to bring that shit up. But I wanted to mention, on the question of, are the Chinese people happy with their system and with their government? Yes. I mean, compared to the United States or even any European country, China's satisfaction with their system and the party and their government just blows all the capitalist countries out of the water.
You got it, Dan. Thank you very much for your question. Sphincter of Doom strikes back, says government interference isn't capitalism.
Capitalism is inexorably tied to government interference. There has never been a capitalist society that did not involve government interference. So it's the myth of a pure capitalist economy. It's never existed anywhere on earth at any time.
You got it, and this one coming in from S.J. Thomason. Oh, we got that one. And Mango T says, Infrared, you were right. Capitalism is great at the beginning, but the end result will always be a handful of wealthy controlling everything. I guess they agree with you. Tom, what are your thoughts?
It starts that way. That's not how it ends. It's always been that way. There's always a distribution in wealth and the super rich and the super poor because biology. It's always, some people always have more resources than other people, and they use those resources to gain more resources. That's why evolution is a thing.
This one coming in from S.J. Thomason says, why is the world ignoring the atrocities of the Uyghurs going on now in concentration camps?
The world isn't ignoring it. It's just that the West is trying to make some shit up and no one else is buying it because they have no reason to buy into it. I mean, all the Islamic countries visited Xinjiang and they didn't see anything. Many countries have been invited. Europe has been invited. America has been invited. They don't want to come, right? So it's not that the world's ignoring it. It's just that it's not happening. I recommend you actually talk to people living in China or people living in Xinjiang to get a balanced and fair perspective about the situation there.
You got it. And thank you very much for your question. This one coming in from, do appreciate it, Ryan Lyon says, Infrared, why don't you live in China if it is that much better?
To me, the idea of choosing what country you live in based on preferences is like choosing your mother based on your preferences. You don't choose your mother. You don't choose your parents. In the same way, you don't choose your homeland. You don't choose the soil that you were born into, that you were raised into. And I am an American. I was born in America, and this is my country. I am of no use to the Chinese. I am of no use to Russians or Cubans or any other type of people. I am an American. Even if I think China's system is better, that doesn't mean I don't want what's best for my own country. I am an American, it's a stupid question.
This one coming in from Sphincter of Doom says, saying capitalism is inexorably linked to government interference doesn't mean they're interchangeable or that every element of one can be attributed to the other as well.
Well, for you to try and isolate capitalism as its own essence, separate from that, I just question, where does that exist? Everywhere we see that what we call capitalism exists, it is tied to the state interference in the government. So I have yet to be confronted with an example of capitalism that is not inexorably tied to state interference.
Before there were any governments would be the answer to that. That's when guy with biggest stick
wins. I forgot. Capitalism is when people were trading beads and stuff, right?
Yes, because when you have pure capitalism, it's just guy with biggest stick wins.
That's the most dumb shit I've ever heard in my life, but continue.
Yeah, you make shit and you trade it.
Do appreciate all of your questions, folks, and want to remind you, our guests are linked in the description. So if you want to hear more from T-Jump, if you want to hear more from Infrared, you can find their links in the description box right now. What are you waiting for? And that includes if you're listening via the podcast, you can find both Tom's and Infrared's links in the description box at the podcast. We highly encourage you, check them out. You can hear more capitalism, communism type debates at their channels. We really do appreciate these guys. And so thanks, T-Jump and Infrared. It has been a true pleasure to have you.
Thanks, James, for hosting. It's appreciated. Thank you, Haas, for joining. Appreciate the opportunity. And I do have a question. Have you seen China Uncensored, the YouTube channel?
Yeah, it's a misinformation YouTube channel that's been debunked many times.
You got it. But we want to say I'll be back in just a moment, folks, to give you updates about this upcoming epic conference, Modern Day Debate's first ever debate con in Dallas, Texas, in January. You don't want to miss it, folks. Tickets are going to be on sale soon. More info about that, as we are pumped that both T-Jump and Infrared have agreed to join us for that conference for some juicy live debates in person. With that, thanks so much, everybody. We will be back in just a moment, or I'll be back in just a moment with updates on that. So stick around.
So is that all? Sorry.
Yep. No, you're good. Don't worry. I was my fingers all bumpy, but I want to say seriously, guys, thanks for being here. It's been a true pleasure. And yeah, you're free to go and take a load off. Thanks for being here. Seriously.
Peace out. See you later.
No problem. See you later.
Take care, guys.